Alright, welcome everyone to this new video on Mamma Mia Dev. This video will be the first of a series where we explore Avalonia UI. Avalonia is a cross-platform framework built on top of .NET and used to build user interfaces. You can use it to easily build interfaces for desktop and mobile devices, whether it's Windows, Linux, Android or iOS. It also supports WebAssembly. Avalonia uses XAML, which is an XML-based language, heavily used in Microsoft environments, especially for WPF and Xamarin applications. It supports the most common controls, such as buttons, text fields, sliders, and so on. We'll see how to use all the controls in the next videos. Another important concept supported by Avalonia is the Model View Model Pattern, or MVVM. MVVM is a common way to structure UI applications that separates view logic from application logic in a way that, for instance, it allows your applications to become more unit testable. MVVM relies upon Avalonia's binding capabilities to separate your application into a view layer, as we said, which displays standard Avalonia windows and controls, and a view model layer, which defines the functionality of the application independently of Avalonia itself. We'll see more of this during the practical demo. Alright, let's say that you want to develop an application using Avalonia UI. Where do you start? Now, the starting point should always be the official website, the one that you see on the screen. You had to get started. The website is full of information, so I highly suggest you to navigate and browse it all over. Start from installation, and you can see there are various options. There is the .NET CLI, Visual Studio, there are Visual Studio extensions, JetBrains Rider. There's an extension for JetBrains Rider as well. Alright, so Avalonia is built in, Rider has built-in support for Avalonia XAML, so it's already supported. We can install the extensions. We can do it later. So basically what you can do is start your IDE, whether it's Visual Studio Rider. If it's Visual Studio, you need to install an extension, create a new .NET project and start from scratch. Or the easy way is to go on the .NET CLI tab and install the Avalonia templates, which you can do but by just copy pasting this command line to your prompt, paste it, just wait a second for it to complete, and here we go. We installed Avalonia templates version 11.0.2. We've got a couple of them. There is the .NET tab, .NET MVVM, cross-platform, a resource dictionary, styles, and some more. What we are interested in for this first episode is the MVVM app. Now that we install the templates, we can head back to Rider. I will use Rider during these videos, but you can definitely use anything. Having a complete ID is suggested, it's easier, and whether it's Visual Studio or Rider, all the things that you see should be applicable in both cases. So now let's create a new solution, and on the left you should now see, if you scroll down, a new set of templates, the one that we saw before. I think, yes, we can see them. So the one we are interested in is the MVVM application, and solution name we can just go with Avalonia application, project name, let's leave it like that. Pick a directory, use .NET, the latest version that you have. Of course you need to have .NET installed. In case you don't have .NET installed, I will leave you a link in the description to install it. And I think we can just start with it. Hit create button and wait for it to spin up the template. All right, cool. Let's leave Rider some time to restore packages, and after that we will have a quick tour of the application. Cool. Now that the project is fully loaded, let's head to the program.cs. If there are any .NET developers watching this video, you would already have recognized this is the entry point of the Avalonia application, and we'll dig into the details in another video. For now, let's just have a look at this appbuilder.configure app. This app, if we click on it, we get directed to this app.xaml. XAML is an extension used by Avalonia, and if I'm not wrong, it's just used to avoid conflicts with Visual Studio XAML files. So that's it. Those are plain XAML files, but with an A in front of it. Cool. You can see that XAML files in Avalonia have a XAML file, as I said, and a CS file, which is called code behind. So every XAML has some code associated. If you go into the app XAML, you can see that it's simple XML. You have tags, you have values. This represents standard XML notation. Here we specify the class associated to this XAML is app. This is a using declaration, theme, some other stuff. Styles is used to specify, of course, styles. Here we are setting the Fluent theme. We'll go into the details in another video. So every XAML has its code behind, and if you click on the app.cs, you can see that it's inheriting from the application. There is an initialize method, and Avalonia is doing all these things. And probably the most important thing that you see that you need to focus on here is this desktop.main window, new main window with a data context. Cool. The data context is associated to data bindings, but we'll see something more in another video. So from here you can see that we are instantiating a main window, and if we click on it, the main window is again a project class as before, and you can find it into a view. The main window is the main window that is the main view that we are actually loading in our application. And as before, you can see that there is a main window XAML and a main window.cs. And basically, every XAML file in Avalonia most of the time produces an actual class, and this class is called main window in this case. And that's why you can see that it's declared, the code behind class is declared as partial. Now, there's not really a lot going on here. The main window has just a constructor with some initialization things going on, which are inherited from the window, because as we saw, this is the main view and it's a window. And just to have a clear view of what's going on, let's try to build and run the application. Nice, cool. This is our Avalonia application. This application can run on different platforms with some adjustments. But yeah, that's it. That's the Avalonia application. And what you see here is actually the main window, which is displaying a text box. You can see it here. There's a text box with some tags and values applied. And the result is this black background with the white text. Nice. Now that we've seen a preview of the application, let's go and play around with the XAML file a bit. Let's customize the application and see how we can interact with the UI. So let's close the application Let's see. So this is a text and it's centered. So we can add controls, UI controls, using the XAML file, the XAML notation, or we can add it using the code behind. Let's start from the XAML notation, and for instance, the first thing that you will notice when you build an Avalonia UI is that if you add any other control, like a button, for instance, okay, you will see you will get an error because the content cannot be set more than once. It means that we can only have one control, and that means that we need some sort of component that can contain other controls inside it. Those kind of components or controls are usually called layout controls. Now there are many type of layout controls. So let's quickly jump on the Avalonia documentation and see what's available. To serve the documentation, we just need to we go to the official website, go to Get Started, click on Documentation. On the left side, you see all the content that you can find here. If we go under Basics, User Interface, Controls are basically UI components and had to built-in controls. The first type of controls that we can see is actually the layout controls. There are a lot of them: border canvas, dock panel, expander grid. Some of them are most common, some are not. One of the most famous is the stack panel, which allows multiple child controls arranged in sequence horizontally or vertically. And this is what we can use to start with. If you go inside the stack panel page, you can see a brief description, properties you can use, an example, which is fundamental, and an image to showcase what we're going to do. So basically here we can see a stack panel with a width of 200, I guess it's pixels, not sure. And you can see that this is one component only. It starts here and ends here with 4 rectangles in it. And you can see the image: a red one, a blue one, a green one, a yellow one. So let's quickly copy this example and paste it inside our application. Cool. Now we just have the text. So the welcome to Avalonia text. Let's drag it in, replace the rectangles. Let's take our button, put it inside the stack panel. And as you can see, it's not giving the red line has vanished. That's because we have only one element as a content. Just ignore the design element for now. We don't have to care about it. So you can see the starting tag, the ending tag, and this is whatever it's inside, it's the content, and the content must be made by one component only. If we run the application, cool. You can start to see something. Layout is completely broken for now, but you can see this little button here and the welcome to Avalonia text. Now let's just put something into the button like click me, and we have a width. We can add some margins like 16. If you remember, there was also a property called spacing, which creates an even spacing between the child controls, and that's what we want to use. Let's go spacing, and we'll see. Let's make it at 10. So text button. Let's start again. Here we go. You can see the text, the clickable button, which is left aligned. We can fix it by using the horizontal alignment tag that you can see in the text block. Equals quotes, and you can see that there's a drop down with suggestions. We can use center and rerun the application. Here we go. We've got some margins, we've got some spacing, our text block, and our button, which is doing nothing for now. Cool. Now you notice that every time we make a small change to the UI, we need to rerun the application, and it takes a couple of seconds based on the complexity of the application and the device it's running on. It depends on your computer, basically. Now, there is an easier way to get a preview without running the actual application. And in Rider, you can achieve that by installing a specific extension, which it's not, all right, preview is not supported, but you can support it if you install an extension. This extension, I think, can be found inside the installation guide. Under the JetBrains Rider, you can see that there's this Rider extension. It's called Avalonia Rider. You can see from the screenshot that it gives you a preview of your application. So let's copy the name. Let's head to the Rider application. Let's look for the plugins and extensions. I think it's in settings, plugins. Cool. Marketplace. Look for Avalonia Rider. Here we go. And that's the application. So always double check that you are installing what you want to install. Let's click to install. Third-party plugin notice. Okay, cool. Always be aware of what you install, because there may be malicious software that can be spread through extensions. Now this is an official one, so we should be safe. Cool, it's installed. We just need to restore our IDE and it should be already available. Let's give it some time to load properly. Nice. Now we should be able to see a preview of our application. If we just reset it and open the panel, here we go. There are a couple of options to customize this view, change orientation. I am happy with having the preview on the right. You can resize the screen, and you can see that it has some dimensions that we can change, and let's do it now. All right, you can manipulate the window dimensions in two ways. One is the design way, which affects only the preview. For instance, we can have a, 400 width by 500, like this. You will notice that if you run it, the window is not actually 400 by 500. To change the actual width and height, we need to apply the width tag, and let's use the 400 to reflect the design one, and the height to 500. Nice. So if we run it down, it should be 400 by 500. Here we go. Cool. Our cool application. The preview is working. The application is, the button is clicking. The nice feature of the preview that you can actually click on buttons, so it really gives you a preview of what you're designing. Of course, there are some limitations. Honestly, I've never hit any hard limit on the preview. It always worked, but sometimes it can give some errors. We can do some tests by, duplicating the button like this. You can see it automatically updates. If it doesn't update, just rebuild the application and it should solve most of the problems usually. Cool. And before we proceed, let's try to let's delete the button like this. And just for this episode, let me align the tags. Just for this episode, let's ignore the fact that we are using this binding keyword here because it's used to set the text of this text block or label. Probably WPF and WinForms developers are more familiar with the term label. So if you don't mind, I'll call it label because it's easier. And this is using a binding keyword, which is part of the data binding. And we'll see what is data binding in another episode. For now, let's just set the value of this label manually with, I don't know, test or welcome to Mamma Mia Dev. Like this, you can see that the UI is updating live, and by setting the text value, you change the actual text of your label. The horizontal alignment center, we know what it's doing. We can manipulate it and see what happens. Left, it is slightly on the left. It's probably more visible if we just type one thing. It's left. You can see that it's on the left. You can say center, and it's center. And you can guess if we put right, it goes on the right. Nice. There are a lot of properties that you can play with. If you're curious, you can just control click on the tag itself. It will decompile the Avalonia library, and you can see the source code. You can see that this is the text block source code. If you scroll down, you can see a bunch of background property, padding, font family, a lot of things, text property. And if you scroll down, you can see the actual properties available. Padding, background, text. There's a lot, and you can have fun. Otherwise, you can always head to the Avalonia documentation. Where is it? Here we go. And I think there must be a URL. Oh, here we go. You can surf the source code directly, for instance, of the stack panel. And it will bring you to the GitHub repository where you can have some fun. Cool. The last thing that we can do in this episode is to make something happen when we click on the button. To do it, we can leverage at least two properties. One is the command, which we will use when we talk about the binding capabilities. But for now, I think we can use something called, it was action or event, I think. Let's check the documentation. Button controls, you see the button, click mode, command. Oh, it's click. It's click. I guess the simplest way is to use the click property. And let's just give it a name for now. Let's call it button on click. Will be red. I think we can use Rider actions menu to create an event handler for us. Cool. All right. In this case, Rider already knows what's the signature of this method here. And you can see that it's accepting two input parameters. One is the sender and one is the routed event tags. We are not going to use them in this situation, but they will be useful in the future. So to recap, the easiest way to assign an action or a function or a method to the button is by setting the click property. Whenever you click something, you remember that at the beginning we talked about the XAML file and the code behind. All right, the XAML file we said contains the UI elements, while the code behind contains the whole logic of the window. Now, there are more efficient ways to structure your application. One is leveraging the MVVM pattern. In this case, we'll just stick with the plain simple code behind implementation, which means that we are going to put all our logic inside the main window partial class, like in this case. So you see we created a private method, and in this private method we might want to, I don't know, just to start with, we can log a message, maybe like hello button hit. So now that we attached the button on click method, whenever we click this button, we should see a console log. Let's see if it works. Okay, we've got the application, we've got the console here, and if we click, you can see the console log appearing properly. Cool. Now that we know that the button click is working and it's doing what we want, let's try to change the text block text. How do we do it? So we have this button on click. So inside this method, we need a way to say, take the label, take the text and set it to something. So we need something like text block text. This is a variable that is not it's not existing, and we need to set it to something like clicked. Cool. How do we get from the code behind? How do we get the text of the label of the text block? Well, the simplest way without using any pattern is to name the text block, and you can do it by setting the name property to something like text block name. This. Cool. When you set a name in the text block or in any other control, if you go into the code behind of the same window, you will find text block name. Cool. Yeah, now there are some issues with the IntelliSense, so let's just comment this out. And you can see that we've got a property called text block name. If we look for this property, you can see that we are, as we said before, the main window is a partial class because the UI, the XAML file of the main window, is producing another file with the same name. And whenever you navigate any property that is created there, you can see the actual file. So we've got the main window, the initialized component that we were calling in the constructor, and you can see here a property called text block name. So this property gives us access to the text block component in the UI. And by doing that, we can access its properties. And one property is the text one. And we can set it to clicked, for instance. So now, whenever we click the button, we should see a console log, and the label text should change into clicked. Let's test it out. Nice. Let's see. Cool. Button is here. If we click it, we can see the console log down here, and we can also see that the label text changed. Let's just put it in the center. Let's align it to center, rerun it, and there we go. You can see that we can click it and you will see all the console logs, and of course the label is not, it's actually changing but with the same text. And that's it. There's a very basic interaction between a button and the label. Nice. That's all for this episode. In the next video, we'll see what is data binding and how we can use it to create more complex interactions by leaving the UI components decoupled from the code behind. See ya!